Can God make a mistake? Well, I suppose anything's possible. It certainly is true that human beings make mistakes on a regular basis. But what about God? Does God make mistakes? The revelation of the Bible in Jesus Christ is, no, God never makes a mistake. Why? First of all, because God is eternal. God is outside of the dimension of time. God sees past, present, and future at a glance because he is outside of the dimension of time. He is eternal. Because of his perspective, God doesn't make mistakes. Secondly, God doesn't make mistakes because he's all-knowing. The technical word for that is omniscient. God's knowledge is not limited the way your knowledge is limited, the way my knowledge is limited. Albert Einstein once said, "I know less than 1% of all there is to know." Honest, humble statement. But God is all-knowing. God's mind is so much bigger than your mind, than my mind. There's no comparison. He is all-knowing. And because he's all-knowing, he doesn't make mistakes. Thirdly, God doesn't make mistakes because he's all-powerful. Nobody can intimidate God. Nobody can twist God's arm. God is not manipulated by someone or something. God is all-powerful. Because God is eternal, because God is all-knowing, and because God is all-powerful, he does not make mistakes. And fourthly, God doesn't make mistakes because he's good. The Bible calls that holy. God's motives are pure and true. And therefore, God doesn't make mistakes because he gets confused, because his motives get mixed up. No, God is pure, good, holy, and true. One day, Jesus Christ was in a boat with his disciples. A storm unexpectedly swept down on that sea, and the boat was tossed about like a little twig. Jesus was in the back of the boat, asleep. The disciples came to Jesus, jostled him, woke him up, and said, "Don't you care if we drown? Why are you asleep?" And Jesus stood up, rebuked the wind, and told the waves to sit down, and nature obeyed him. Then the disciples said, "Who is this man? Even the wind and the waves obey him." When Jesus unleashed that power and commanded nature to obey, and when the disciples observed that nature obeyed the words of Jesus, then they were really scared. And they asked, "What kind of man is this, that even the wind and the waves obey him?" When you begin to grapple with the power of God, when you begin to seriously consider the power of Jesus Christ, you begin to understand he doesn't make mistakes. He is good, he is loving, and he's also all-powerful. He does what is true and good. He does not make mistakes. While he was alive, Jesus said, "I'm going to die, but 3 days later, I'm going to rise from the dead." And the historical evidence is, 3 days after he died, he physically, bodily rose from the dead. This Jesus Christ defeated death. I am deeply impressed by modern medicine. But modern medicine is incapable of giving us eternal life. Jesus Christ is capable. He's the all-powerful God who created life in the first place. He loves you and me so much, he wants us to spend eternity with him. That's an amazing love. But he's got the power to back up that love, to back up that promise, that if you and I put our faith in him, he will give us eternal life. Does God make mistakes? No, he doesn't make mistakes. He's totally reliable. But you and I can make mistakes. And the biggest mistake that a human being makes is when they reject God's love, when they reject Jesus Christ. That is a mistake that has eternal consequences. If you and I choose to spend our lives separate from God, we will spend eternity separate from God. But if you and I choose to live our lives together with God, then we will spend eternity with him. And the way to choose to live your life together with God is to accept Christ's forgiveness, to humbly trust in him, and then to live a life of submitting to him as Lord, as CEO, as coach, as manager, as the boss of your life. And that is the most fulfilling, the wisest life possible, because God does not make mistakes.